The alarms began as a soft chime, polite, almost apologetic, before escalating into a panicked wail that shook the metal bones of Orbit Station R9. Commander Leora Venn jolted upright, spilling her mug of synth coffee across her uniform. She swore under her breath, not because of the impending threat she already felt crawling through the vibrations of the station, but because she knew exactly who the galaxy would call next. And she knew Earth would answer the same way it always did, with chaos wrapped in confidence. A holographic screen flickered to life, displaying the worried face of Admiral Torvek of the Galactic Council. His frills were trembling, a sign of extreme stress for his species, and he kept glancing off-screen as though expecting something monstrous to breach his office at any second. "Commander Venn," he blurted out without greeting, "we require immediate military support. The invading fleets have grown unpredictable. 10 worlds have already fallen. 3 council armies have been overwhelmed. He swallowed. We need soldiers. Earth soldiers." Leora blinked. "Why are you telling me this like it's a disaster? Isn't this what you begged Earth for? Reinforcements?" Torvek's frills flattened. "Not those reinforcements." Before Leora could ask what he meant, the station shook again, this time not from alarms, but from the thunderous thrum of engines far too powerful for any civilian dock. An entire bay's worth of clamps screamed as something heavy, ancient, and definitely not regulation settled into the docking ring. Leora turned as her comms officer shouted, "Ma'am, Earth has sent a ship. 1 ship. No identification code. No registration. No records in the fleet database." Torvek groaned. "Oh no. They wouldn't dare." But Earth did dare. Earth always dared. The docking doors hissed open with a hydraulic growl, releasing a gust of air that carried the scent of ozone, old steel, and something mildly resembling campfire smoke. Leora instinctively rested a hand on her sidearm. She'd worked with many human units, some hilarious, some infuriating, some dangerously inventive, but the ship that had just docked was no standard transport. Its hull looked older than some civilizations. Black plating patched with strange alloys, some glowing faintly, others etched with marks that resembled tally counts, gave it the appearance of a veteran gladiator who had fought entire empires and survived out of spite. Scrawled across the side were the words: "The Mythmaker. The rumors. The classified files. The whispered stories that military instructors never confirmed nor denied. Legends so ridiculous she always assumed humans made them up for fun." Those legends were now docking at her station. A ramp clanged down. Heavy footsteps echoed. Leora squared her shoulders. And out stepped 3 humans. Just 3. But even from here, she felt the weight of their presence. The first was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore armor scarred by plasma burns. He looked like someone had forged him by melting down a starship and teaching it to frown. His hair was silver, tied loosely behind him, and his eyes were so calm they were almost unsettling. He offered Leora a polite nod. "Ma'am. Captain Orion Graves. Earth said you needed soldiers." Leora stared. "Just you?" A grin tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Oh no. We brought backup." The second figure stepped forward, a woman with red braids, grease-streaked cheeks, and a toolkit that looked like it had been repurposed from parts of a bomb. She had a cheerful, chaotic energy that immediately made Leora nervous. "Hi," she chirped. "Name's Juniper Locke. Engineer. Demolitions expert. Tech whisperer. Occasionally sets things on fire by accident." "Occasionally?" Orion muttered. "Okay, frequently." Before Leora could respond, the third human slid into view, barely. He was so quiet she didn't notice him until he was standing right beside her. Shorter than the others, hooded, hands in pockets, expression unreadable. "And this is?" Leora asked cautiously. The man's voice was soft enough to be unsettling. "Shade." "Just Shade?" He shrugged. "Names are flexible." Humans were already bizarre. Humans with mysterious code names were worse. Humans with a ship called the Mythmaker were worst of all. Torvik's voice crackled from the screen. Commander, these individuals are part of Earth's classified Legend Tier combat units. They're not officially acknowledged. Leora hissed. You mean the teams the Council agreed never to activate because they're too unpredictable? Technically, Torvik sputtered. We agreed Earth should not activate them. We never said they wouldn't. Orion clapped his hands once, loudly. All right, Commander. Brief us. Leora swallowed. The stakes crystallized instantly. The Council was desperate enough to request soldiers. Earth responded by sending myths. Not armies. Not battalions. Just 3 humans with reputations so extreme they bordered on supernatural. She straightened, activating a hologram of the invasion front. The enemy is hitting our colonies in unpredictable patterns. Their formations shift every hour. Our analysts can't understand their strategy. They appear chaotic but somehow outmaneuver us every time. Juniper tapped her chin. So basically, y'all are getting out-crazied. Shade's hood dipped. Interesting. Orion simply nodded. We'll stop them. Leora blinked. With 3 of you? 3 is plenty, Orion replied calmly. Especially when the galaxy wanted soldiers. Juniper smirked. And Earth sent legends. Shade exhaled softly, almost a whisper. Let's begin. In that moment Leora understood 2 things. 1. Earth had not sent help. 2. Earth had unleashed something far scarier. The enemy fleet didn't waste time. As orbit station R9 drifted above the violet clouds of Varelis Prime, the void outside sparked with incoming warp signatures, hundreds, then thousands, like a swarm of metallic hornets tearing their way into real space. Commander Leora Venn felt the deck rumble as shields activated, lights dimming in preparation for impact. Officers rushed between terminals, shouting updates that grew more panicked with each passing second. But the 3 humans? They looked like they were waiting for their food order. Orion Graves stood with his arms crossed, studying the holographic map with casual interest. Juniper sat upside down in a chair for reasons unknown, tinkering with a device that beeped in a way that made Leora deeply uncomfortable. Shade simply stared out the viewport, motionless, as if memorizing the pattern of the invading fleet. Leora forced a breath. The enemy is jamming all long-range scanners. They're deploying in randomized formations, no obvious weak points, no command ship. Every hour they adapt to our countermeasures faster than we can update them. Juniper whistled. Adaptive swarm intelligence. Fun. Fun? Leora snapped. This swarm has consumed 10 worlds. Oh, Juniper corrected. You meant for you. Yeah, that sucks. Shade's voice drifted in, soft but firm. They're testing us. Every movement is deliberate. Orion nodded. They want to overwhelm. Break mind before body. Well, Juniper said as she flipped upright. Good thing humans are unbreakable and slightly stupid. Leora rubbed her forehead. What exactly are you planning to do? Orion pointed at the holomap. Beat them at their own game. With 3 people? No, Juniper chimed. With 3 very irresponsible people. Before Leora could demand clarification, the ship-wide speakers crackled. Enemy fighters incoming. First wave, 3,000 strong. The nearest officers tensed. Leora drew her weapon on instinct, though firing it at a window would do nothing. The station shuddered as the first barrage slammed into the shields. Then Orion rolled his shoulders. Juniper, Shade, let's give them a greeting. Shade spoke first. Stealth breach? Stealth, Orion agreed. Juniper bounced to her feet. Explosive hello? Controlled explosive, he clarified. Close enough. Leora stepped forward. What does that even? Wait, what are you 2 doing? Because Shade had vanished. Literally vanished. No shimmer of cloaking tech. No blur. One blink he was there, and the next blink he was a whisper of air. Juniper grinned at Leora's expression. He does that. Don't worry. We lose him half the time too. How is that supposed to help us? Give it a minute. Juniper raced after Orion down the hallway toward the docks. Leora followed, shouting orders as she went, trying to understand the madness Earth had dropped into her lap. They reached the Mythmaker just as Juniper slid under its hull, sparks flying as she welded something onto its plating. Juniper, Orion called. Incoming fighters are 20 seconds out. Perfect. That means I have 6 seconds more than I need. How is that? Boom. The docking bay shook as Juniper slammed a palm on her device. A ripple of invisible energy erupted from the ship, passing through the station like a shockwave without leaving so much as a scorch mark. Outside, hundreds of enemy drones suddenly veered off course, spiraling into each other like confused insects. Leora stared. What did you just do? Juniper beamed. Gave their targeting AI a teeny-tiny migraine. That is not a scientific term. It is now. Orion boarded the ship. Commander, keep your shields focused on the station's left side. We'll take the right. You're one ship. Technically, Juniper shouted from the cockpit. We're half a ship and a whole problem. As the ramp sealed shut, Leora felt a chill. These weren't soldiers. They were forces of nature. And as the Mythmaker blasted out of the docking bay like a bullet from an ancient cannon, she could only pray they were a force pointed in the right direction. Outside the station, chaos reigned. The enemy swarms shifted formations instantly, compensating for the glitch Juniper created. But Orion was already ahead of them. The Mythmaker dove directly into the densest cluster, engines screaming like war drums. Most pilots would avoid a swarm. Orion aimed straight for its heart. Leora watched from the command bridge, stunned, as the ship twisted between beams with impossible precision. How is he flying like that? Her liaison officer whispered. Ma'am, that ship shouldn't be able to move like that. Meanwhile, Shade appeared inside an enemy destroyer. Not teleported. Not boarded. Just appeared. He slipped like a shadow through the corridors, leaving confused guards collapsing silently behind him. In minutes he reached the central core, an organic mass pulsing with neural energy, and pressed a single device onto it. A faint beep. Shade whispered. Boom! He vanished again. The destroyer exploded from the inside out, petals of molten metal unfurling in the void. Back at the station, Leora's heart jumped. Who fired that shot? Her officer gulped. No one, ma'am. I think one of the enemy ships just killed itself. Leora exhaled shakily. No. Not killed itself. Killed by a legend. While the swarm adapted to the blast, Orion and Juniper made their move. She unleashed drones equipped with her improvised disruptors, scrambling enemy signals. Orion used a moment of confusion to carve a burning path through the swarm, firing with such precision it bordered on art. The swarm's chaotic strategy, once unstoppable, now looked messy compared to the humans' controlled insanity. Juniper cackled over open comms. They keep adapting! That's adorable! Leora realized something terrifying. Humans weren't countering chaos. Humans were better at chaos. And as enemy reinforcements poured in, she felt the station tremble again. This fight was far from over. The swarm arrived like a second nightfall, blotting out starlight with a living wall of metal, heat signatures, and pulsing red optics. Orbit Station R9 shuddered under the pressure of their sheer numbers, the shields dimming from blue to a dangerously pale white. Commander Leora Van braced herself against the control console as the deck trembled. If this next wave broke through, the station wouldn't survive 5 minutes. Her officers shouted telemetry updates, each one more hopeless than the last. Ma'am, the swarm is splitting into tri-spiral formations. They are redirecting kinetic fire at the weaker shield nodes. 2 destroyers inbound, straight through the center. And then, the one that froze her blood. Ma'am, the Mythmaker is requesting a direct vector into the heart of the swarm. Leora snapped around. Denied! They'll be torn apart. But the comms officer winced. Ma'am, they already launched. Of course they did. On the front display, the Mythmaker streaked through the void like a spear dipped in lightning. Energy trails swirled around it as Orion pushed the ship far beyond its limits, every movement sharp, deliberate, lethal. No swagger. No bravado. Just a soldier doing exactly what he was built for. Juniper's voice crackled through the speakers. "Commander! If you've got final words for us, now's the time." Leora's heart stopped. Juniper continued casually. "Not because we're gonna die, Shade says we're good. But you know. Just in case." Leora shouted. "What is your plan?" A beat of silence. Orion answered calmly. "Win." That wasn't a plan. That was a threat. But before Leora could protest, the display blazed with light. Shade had reappeared on the bridge of the Mythmaker, dropping into the co-pilot's seat as though materializing from dust. His hood shifted. "Tunnels are ready." Orion nodded. "Begin." Juniper slammed her fist on a console, and a pulse erupted from the ship, an electromagnetic shockwave so concentrated it carved invisible corridors through the chaos of the swarm. The drones reacted instantly, shifting formations, except they shifted wrong. Juniper had reverse-engineered their adaptive patterns so quickly it made Leora's head hurt. Shade tapped a series of controls with surgical precision, guiding the ship into one of the newly carved holes in the swarm. The entire mass of enemy units writhed, thousands pivoting in confusion. "They're lost in their own logic loops," Juniper snorted. "I told you they adapt too fast. They overthink everything. They're basically evil smart refrigerators." Orion didn't laugh. His eyes remained locked ahead. "Target the Nexus." Leora jerked upright. "The Nexus? That's suicide. The swarm protects it with." But the humans had already accelerated. The Nexus core hung deep within the swarm, a living warbrain, enormous and grotesquely beautiful. It pulsed with shifting fractal patterns, directing the swarm's movements with quantum-level precision. It had never been breached. Never even been touched. Shade whispered. 15 seconds. Juniper kicked the engine panel. "Try 8. The Mythmaker spiraled as plasma fire rained around it. A beam skimmed the hull, sending sparks across the camera feed. Dozens more drones latched onto the ship. Leora held her breath as the plating groaned. "Shields at 11%. An officer announced weakly. Leora whispered. "They won't make it." Orion reached up and pulled a lever. The Mythmaker roared. Not louder. Deeper. As if the ship remembered ancient wars and decided to wake up for one more. Juniper braced herself. "Oh boy, he's using the old engines." Leora squinted. "Old engines?" Juniper grinned manically. "The kind that got Earth banned from 3-star systems and put on probation by 7. The ship exploded forward. Drones shattered in its wake. Shockwaves cracked the swarm apart. And suddenly, miraculously, they were through. The Nexus loomed before them like a colossal crystalline heart, beating in rhythm with the entire warfront. "Shade?" Orion said. He was already gone. Inside the Nexus. How did he get inside the Nexus? He moved like a ghost, slipping through shifting neural conduits while energy tendrils tried to detect him. The core glowed with malicious intelligence, patterns swirling in unreadable logic. Shade pulled a small sphere from his cloak. "Juniper," he murmured, "your turn." Back on the ship, she smacked a button. "Activating emotional destabilizer." Leora blinked. "The what?" Suddenly the warbrain froze. Because Juniper had hacked its emotional emulator, an illegal subsystem the swarm used to mimic fear responses in its enemies, and cranked it to maximum. The Nexus panicked. The entire swarm panicked. Millions of drones jerked erratically, crashing into each other, fleeing imaginary threats, or spinning in place like confused toys. Shade placed the sphere gently on the glowing neural pillar, whispered, "Rest," and vanished. Orion hit the engines once more. They escaped the Nexus just as the sphere detonated, not with fire, but with a cascading shutdown that rippled through the entire swarm like a wave of sleep. Drones powered down mid-flight. Destroyers drifted, lights dimming. The warbrain cracked like glass. Silence fell across the battlefield. Orbit Station R9 erupted into stunned cheers as thousands of enemy ships died peacefully, drifting like metallic snow. Leora sagged against the console, breath trembling. They did it. 3 humans did it. But her relief died instantly when an officer shouted, "Commander, new signatures! Another fleet inbound! Bigger than the first!" Leora's blood went cold. The swarm wasn't defeated. The swarm was waking something worse. She whispered, "Orion, what do we do now?" Orion's voice came through calm, steady. "We prepare." Juniper added, "We improvise." And Shade whispered, barely audible, "We survive." The stars rippled as the second fleet arrived, vast, monstrous, and disturbingly organized. Unlike the panicked swarm from moments earlier, these ships formed a perfect, geometric wall, each vessel moving with mechanical intention. No chaos. No adaptation loops. No weaknesses Juniper could exploit with a spark and a grin. These weren't drones. These were the architects, the species that built the swarm. Orbit Station R9 fell silent. Every officer stared at the tactical map as glowing red signatures multiplied like a plague. The new fleet dwarfed the old one 100-fold, each ship humming with the kind of ancient power only civilizations older than written history could wield. Commander Leora felt her throat tighten. Why would they send this? What did we just wake up? Juniper's voice crackled through comms, sounding far less playful than before. A tiny note. Maybe shutting down the Nexus sent a distress beacon. You know. Accidentally? Accidentally? Juniper mumbled. In my defense, it was glowing in a very please hack me sort of way. Orion cut in, steady as stone. Focus. The architects are here. They won't panic. They won't adapt wrong. They won't make mistakes. Shade's voice drifted like smoke. They want their throne back. Outside the viewport, the architect flagship descended, an obsidian titan shaped like a blade slicing the fabric of space itself. Its presence radiated pressure, as though it bent gravity by sheer will. R9's lights flickered just from its proximity. A voice echoed across all frequencies, cold and resonant. This system has interfered with swarm operations. Identify the entity responsible. Leora froze. Everyone turned toward the 3 impossible humans. Juniper whispered, "Do we say hi?" Orion stepped forward in the hollow projector chamber, crossing his arms. "This is Commander Orion Graves of Earth." Silence. Then the architect voice replied, "Earth is listed as extinct." Juniper sputtered. "Rude." Orion didn't flinch. "Update your records." A long pause followed, as though even the architects needed a moment to process the audacity. Finally, "Earth should not exist," Shade murmured. "They fear what they don't understand." Orion nodded once. "Then let's help them understand." The architects charged their weapons. Entire starboard sectors collapsed into darkness as energy built in their cannons, enough power to obliterate the station, the planet below, and perhaps half the surrounding system. "Impact in 40 seconds!" cried an officer. Leora looked at the humans. "We can't repel that. Not with any shield. Not with any fleet," Orion said calmly. "So we won't." "What?" Juniper slapped a device onto the station's holomap, fingers dancing across projected circuits. "Orion, Shade, form the anchor points." Shade vanished. Orion sprinted through the bridge. Leora chased after him. "What anchor points? What are you doing?" Orion didn't stop running. "Something Earth swore we would never use again." Juniper's voice echoed through every speaker. "Time to try the Void Step protocol." Leora's heart dropped. "Void Step? That's a myth. That's not even." "It is," Juniper corrected. "When I'm done with it." Outside, Shade reappeared, placing small dark prisms across the surface of the station with impossible speed. One on a defense tower. One under the communications ring. One on the hull of a passing drone corpse. Orion leapt from a balcony, landing hard on the central platform, slamming his fist onto a prism. The three lit up simultaneously, forming a perfect triangle around orbit station R9. Juniper yelled, "Hold on to something!" Leora grabbed a railing. "You're going to teleport the station?" "Nope," Juniper chirped. "We're going to teleport the architect fleet." The prisms activated. Reality shuddered. Not warped. Not bent. Not folded. It shuddered. A circle of space around the architect armada began to glow, distorting like a heat haze. Their ships fired in panic, beams scattering off in random directions as the void step dragged them toward a tear in the universe shaped like a serpent's open jaws. The architect commander roared, "Cease this! You cannot move an entire arma!" He was cut off as half the fleet was swallowed by the dimensional rift. The remainder tried to flee. Too late. Shade stood floating in open space, stepping from platform to platform of hardened shadow, pressing his palms outward. The rift expanded, pulling the last ships inward like leaves into a storm drain. Orion braced himself against the platform as the force threatened to tear the station apart. Juniper screamed incoherent calculations while frantically typing. Then, thump! The rift snapped shut like a slammed door. The battlefield fell silent. Drifting debris floated where a doomsday armada had stood moments earlier. Orbit Station R9 didn't cheer. They were too stunned. Leora stared at the humans, voice trembling. "You banished an architect fleet!" Juniper wiped sweat from her brow. "Correction, we banished them somewhere. Not sure where. Hopefully somewhere with bad reception." Shade landed silently beside them. "They won't return soon." Orion straightened his jacket. "And if they do, Earth will be waiting." Leora stepped forward, unable to stop herself. "What are you?" Juniper grinned. Shade bowed. Orion answered, "Legends Earth never wanted to need again." The station erupted in applause. Across the galaxy, millions of sensors recorded the impossible. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of deep space, Earth smiled. Because the galaxy had asked for soldiers. But Earth had sent something much more dangerous. Its myths. Its monsters. Its legends. And they were very, very real. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the Void Narratives for more HFY sci-fi tales.